Hello students, and this video tutorial series we're going to call Neurons on Fire. And what we're going to focus on is different kinds of study skills that are going to help you in this course, in all of your college courses, in your academic history, and also in your professional life. These study skills are going to help you throughout life because you're going to gain very important skill sets that are going to lead to greater learning, understanding, and communication. So our first study skill is going to focus on reading. So in our discussion of reading, I wanted to start off with this image. This image has significance to me personally because this is one of the places that I've been in the world and I absolutely love it. Of course, I like going to museums and libraries and all sorts of places when I travel. But in Dublin, Ireland, there is a college there called Trinity College. And of course, I'm a college professor. I go to college campuses. Yes, it's a nerdy thing to do, but I like going to college campuses. And this particular college, a lot of people go to, not just academics, but there is a library there, which is the library that you see in this picture. And this is actually called the Long Room. It's up on the second floor. And it really is that gorgeous. The picture doesn't even do it justice. It just looks like gold bricks lining those shelves. And in a sense it is, because those books are like gold. They're more valuable than gold. And this particular library has so much significance for so many things. It's actually a copyright library, which means that everybody who publishes in Ireland, they have to deposit a copy of their publication free of charge to this library so people all over the world can access it. You also probably have heard of this library because it holds the Book of Kells. But the reason I want to show it to you is because there's so much knowledge out there in the world that we've been accumulating since the very beginning of humanity up to this present moment and beyond. And all of that knowledge we have, and well, not all of it, but a lot of it we do have. And we have these books that write it, that communicate this information to next generations of people. And it's really, really powerful stuff. And so, all these resources are out there for us, but we have to read them. And that means we have to be good readers. And so that's the value of reading that I really want to focus on. So I've put up now a sign that says reading is power and reasons to read. And I just want to tell you guys, since I was a little girl, I have loved reading. And part of the reasons I love reading is because when I was first exposed, my parents really encouraged me to read things that I loved. And, I remember reading Nancy Drew and Trixie Belden mystery stories and so forth. And, so I've read all sorts of things that I've liked, and that helped me develop the skills and the vocabulary and the techniques that I need to use when I'm reading things that maybe initially I'm not as intrigued by as my Nancy Drew mystery stories. But I always develop an interest and start with a positive attitude as I get into things. So from my own experience, of course, reading is rewarding depending on what you're reading. You may have a huge interest in what you're reading, but even if you don't have a huge interest, it's leading to knowledge and wisdom within you so you can communicate with other people. And so you're an educated human being. It grows your vocabulary. One of the things I'm so proud of is my husband told me that, when we first started dating, his family kept commenting about how big his vocabulary seemed to be or how it seemed to be growing, and he attributes a large part of that to his relationship with me, which is really a kind of a cool thing. And where did that come from? It came from lots of reading. But yeah, so reading it opens up so many doors and opportunities and discussions and so forth. So please fall in love with reading, take it slow and easy, but it's there to help you grow and develop to be the very best version of you. So I think we've all had that moment where we've opened up a book, especially a textbook, especially something academic, and we've read several pages. We might even read a whole chapter, and we shut the book and we put it down and we're like, I have no idea what I just read. Okay, that happens to us a lot. And the reason that happens is because we're actually practicing something called mindless reading. And mindless reading is where you're just pretty much running your eyes over the page of what you're reading, and you're not really actively working with the information. You're not organizing it. You're not asking questions. You're not looking for, the main ideas and the supporting facts and the examples. You're just kind of like glazing your eyes over the words, and you may even be reading it out loud. You may even actually be saying it, but you're not actually actively thinking about what you're reading. And so there's actually another way, amazingly so, that we open a book and we read it, and lo and behold, we actually know what we just read, and that's called active reading. And it means that we have like an intense mental engagement, right? We're connected to what we are reading. It's very focused, it's involved, and it means that there's significant neural activity in our brain, and it's actually resulting in deep learning, the kind of learning that that really stays with us. And of course, in terms of grades, we get higher grades when we're practicing active reading. Okay, so how do you focus on being an active reader? One of the major things that you need to focus on is getting the big picture. So anytime you read something, whether it's an article or a chapter or so forth, the first thing that you look for is the key concept. What is the overarching main topic? Once you've identified that, you then move on to the next part, which is called the main idea. It's also called a thesis. And basically that is, what is the most important idea that is being communicated about that key concept that you just identified earlier? So it can be the key concept's kind of a general, grandiose, big idea, but the author that's writing is going to have a take on that key concept. And that's what the main idea or the thesis would be. Now, the secondary idea, which we call a topic sentence, actually elaborates on the main idea, and it kind of answers a question or questions that the reader might have. And then lastly, you're going to have supporting details. And again, you have different categories of them. There can be main supporting details and secondary supporting details. But basically, these are, examples, they're evidence, they're explanations, they're experiences that reinforce the topic sentence, that reinforce the thesis, and ultimately the main idea. So when can you start working on your reading skills? Most students assume that you work on your reading skills while you're reading. And while that is one of the time periods that you can work on your reading skills, you actually can work on them before you ever start reading a book, a chapter, an article, and long after you've read something. So there are these 3 different time periods, and I would like for you in your textbook to go ahead and make sure you've read all of those sections and read all of the tips that they give for what you can do for each of those time periods. Now, some of the things you may already do, some of the things you might think, no, there's no way I'm going to do that. That's fine. But if there's something in there that you're like, that sounds like an interesting strategy, I want to try it out, highlight it. And the next time you have a reading assignment for this class or another class, give it a shot, see how it works, see if you can use it. Now, I do want to talk about for these 3 time periods, what I've noticed works for me. I just want to tell you some of the strategies that work for me. And the first one is in the before reading category. One of the things that happens to me just in life is sometimes I get easily overwhelmed. If somebody just talks about this huge project, it can be overwhelming, or they talk about a huge chapter or a huge amount of reading. And so it's always good to break things down into smaller components, and it's more manageable and you can knock that out. So I like to do that when I read. I actually distribute the kind of into a reading schedule. Another thing that I like to do before I actually start reading is I like to identify the purpose of what I'm reading. And so this kind of goes with a couple of strategies where you actually kind of preview the reading, you kind of look at the table of contents, you look at the chapter a little bit, and then you kind of summarize, well, what's the point of what I'm reading? What's the main message that's trying to get across? Now, while I'm reading, I actually like to pause to recite. I do notice that, like, if I'm reading, my eyes can fall over the page and I can actually read really fast, but reading to understand, you kind of need to slow down a little bit, and you still are breaking it up into chunks. But what I'll do is I'll read either a section or sometimes I just read a paragraph, and after I've read the paragraph, I will pause and I will kind of recite what I've read, but in my own words. So I paraphrase it. So I make sure that I understand what I just read. Another thing that I like to do while I am reading is I actually like to take notes, and it keeps me actively engaged. I have a pen and paper next to me, and what I'll do is I'll read a section, and then I'll summarize it in my own words with the main idea, the supporting facts, and the examples. I also like to look up any definitions and write the academic definition down, or if it's a word that I just don't know in general, I'll also jot it down and then try to use it in some context. And then finally, after reading, I think the thing that I do the most is I like to talk about it. So after I've read something, I'll go and tell, a colleague, a friend, my husband. I'll kind of relate it and try to tell my take on it.